The house cost $11,000. I need to say that up front because I know what it sounds like. I know the reaction. I've gotten it from everyone: my mother, my coworker Denise, the woman at the credit union who processed the wire. $11,000 for a 3-bedroom house with a detached garage and a quarter-acre lot in Belmont County, Ohio. Everyone assumes there's a catch. Everyone assumes I didn't do my homework. I did my homework. My wife, Mara, and I had been renting a 2-bedroom in Columbus for 4 years. $1,400 a month. We had a daughter, Lily, who was about to turn 6, and a second child on the way, a boy, due in November. We weren't desperate. We were just tired of the math never working. Every month we'd sit at the kitchen table after Lily went to bed and try to figure out how to make savings happen, and every month the number was the same. We were treading water, and the water was slowly getting warmer, and neither of us was saying out loud what we both knew, which was that it wasn't going to get better. So when I found the listing in August, I did what anyone would do. I spent 3 weeks verifying it. Tax records. Title search. County assessor data. Structural inspection. I drove out there twice before we even made the offer, once alone and once with a buddy who does residential contracting. The house was built in 1951, a plain Cape Cod with aluminum siding, updated electric, a newer roof, city water. The foundation had some settling cracks but nothing structural. It had been vacant for 14 months. The previous owner was a woman named Claudette Marate. She was 61 years old. She had lived in the house alone for the last 9 years, after her husband died. She wasn't dead. She had moved to a care facility in Wheeling, early-stage dementia, according to the realtor. Her nephew, a man named Dale, handled the sale. He was in his 40s, lived in Pennsylvania, and clearly wanted to be done with the whole thing. He priced it to move. $11,000. I got the sense he would have taken $8,000. We closed in September. Moved in on a Saturday. Mara was 5 months along and we had a U-Haul and 2 friends and it rained the entire day. Lily thought the house was a castle. She ran from room to room yelling about how she could hear her own echo, and the truth is, she could. The house was mostly empty. Claudette's nephew had cleared out the furniture, or most of it. What was left were things nobody wanted: a steel utility shelf in the basement, a built-in cabinet in the hallway, a heavy wooden dresser in the upstairs bedroom that must have been assembled inside the room because there was no geometrical way to get it through the door. And the boxes. There were 11 cardboard boxes in the garage, stacked against the back wall. I noticed them on the first walkthrough but didn't think much of it. Dale said we could throw them out, that it was just old papers and junk his aunt had accumulated. He said he'd been meaning to haul them off and never got around to it. I told him no problem. The first 2 weeks were good. Better than good. Mara painted Lily's room yellow. I fixed a slow drain in the kitchen and replaced the weather stripping on the back door. The neighborhood was quiet, I mean genuinely quiet, not just suburban quiet. There were maybe 7 houses on the whole road, spaced widely apart, and 3 of them looked unoccupied. The neighbor to our east was an older man named Russ who kept to himself and waved when he saw you. The neighbor to our west was a house with a "for sale" sign that had been there so long the post was leaning. At night, the silence was total. I don't mean peaceful. I mean total. No traffic, no dogs, no sirens, no hum of a nearby interstate. Just the house settling and the clock in the kitchen that Mara had hung on the first day. I grew up in a suburb of Dayton and I'd lived in Columbus for a decade. I had never experienced silence like that. It wasn't unpleasant. It was just present, like a texture in the air. It was a Tuesday evening in October when I finally opened the boxes. Mara was upstairs giving Lily a bath. I'd gone out to the garage to get a screwdriver and I saw the stack and thought, I should deal with those before the cold comes and I lose the motivation. So I pulled the first one off the top and cut the tape. Papers. Just like Dale said. Old utility bills. Recipes cut from newspapers. A church bulletin from 2011. Coupons. Expired coupons bound with a rubber band so old it disintegrated when I touched it. Nothing. I opened the second box. More of the same, junk mail, a few holiday cards with no envelopes, a phone book from 2008. The third box had magazines. Gardening magazines. Maybe 60 of them. I was ready to haul the whole stack to the curb. The fourth box was heavier. It was filled with notebooks. Composition notebooks, the black and white marbled kind. I counted them. There were 34. I picked one up and opened it. The handwriting was small and very neat. Blue ballpoint pen. Every line was used. Every margin was filled. There were no paragraph breaks. The text ran from the first page to the last without interruption. I turned to the front cover and found a date written inside, March 2016. I read the first few lines. He is in the kitchen again. I did not invite him and he did not come through the door. He is standing by the window where the light comes through in the afternoon and he is watching me write this. I have told him that I do not want him here. He does not respond. He has never responded. He looks like David but he is not David. David is dead. I know David is dead because I was there when he died and I watched them put him in the ground. This is not David. It looks like David. It stands where David used to stand. It wears the shirt I gave David for Christmas in 2012, the blue flannel one, which I donated to Goodwill after the funeral. I watched them take it away in a bag. I closed the notebook. I stood there for a while. The garage was cold. The overhead bulb was one of those bare utility lights, and it flickered slightly because of a loose connection I'd been meaning to fix. I could hear Lily laughing upstairs through the bathroom window. I knew what I was reading. Claudette had dementia. This was the writing of a woman whose mind was deteriorating. She was seeing her dead husband. It was textbook. It was sad, and it was private, and I should have closed the box and put it in the recycling. Instead, I opened another notebook. June 2017. He moved the chair. I had the chair facing the window and this morning it was facing the wall. I did not move the chair. I asked him if he moved the chair and he stared at me. He stares but he does not blink. David blinked. David had a way of blinking slowly when he was thinking, like he was weighing something. This one does not blink. I clocked it today with the kitchen timer. I sat across from him for 11 minutes and he did not blink once. His eyes do not dry. They do not water. They are open and they are focused and they are on me. I opened a third. January 2018. There are 2 of him now. The second one appeared on Thursday. It was in the hallway when I came out of the bathroom. It is identical to the first. They do not acknowledge each other. They stand in different rooms and they watch me. They are always watching me. I called Dale today and asked him to come visit. He said he'd try to come in February. I did not tell him about them. I don't want him to think I'm losing my mind. I'm not losing my mind. I know what I see. I know what David looked like. These are not David. They look like David. I took 6 of the notebooks inside that night. I didn't tell Mara. I sat in the living room after she went to bed and I read for 3 hours. Here is what I pieced together. Claudette Marat's husband David died in January of 2015 from pancreatic cancer. He was 63. They had been married for 37 years. They had no children. After his death, Claudette continued living in the house alone. According to her notebooks, the first appearance happened in August of 2015, 7 months after the funeral. She came downstairs one morning and there was a figure standing in the kitchen by the window. It looked exactly like David. Same height, same build, same face. It was wearing clothes she recognized, clothes she was certain she had donated or discarded. She was frightened at first. Then she convinced herself it was grief. She went to her doctor. She was prescribed medication for anxiety. She took it faithfully. The figure continued to appear. Over the next 3 years, the notebooks documented a slow accumulation. By March of 2018, Claudette reported 5 of them in the house simultaneously. They did not speak. They did not eat. They did not respond to her voice. They stood in doorways and against walls and by windows, and they watched her. They were identical. Every single one looked exactly like David. But Claudette was meticulous. She was, by every indication in her writing, sharp and observant and systematic. She tracked their positions. She noted which rooms they occupied, at what times, and for how long. She kept a log. And the logs revealed something. They were not random. The figures occupied the house on a pattern. They rotated through the rooms in a fixed sequence that repeated every 72 hours. Claudette mapped this sequence over the course of months, using graph paper taped into one of the notebooks. Kitchen, hallway, bedroom, living room, bathroom, garage. Each figure cycled through the same route, offset from the others by exactly 6 hours. She charted it like shift work. That's what made me keep reading. It wasn't the strangeness. Dementia produces strange beliefs. It was the consistency. Across 34 notebooks spanning almost 4 years, the pattern never contradicted itself. The rotation never deviated. The details never shifted. In my experience, delusions evolve. They mutate. They absorb new fears and shed old ones. Claudette's account was stable. Clinically, pathologically stable. I'll be honest with you. I didn't believe any of it. I thought it was sad. I thought this poor woman had spent the last years of her independence trapped in a detailed hallucination that calcified around her grief, and I thought the notebooks were a heartbreaking artifact of that. I put them back in the box. I went to bed. But I didn't sleep well. At 2:40 in the morning, I woke up because the house was doing something I hadn't heard before. A sound. Not mechanical, not the furnace, not the pipes. It was tonal, almost. A low, steady vibration that seemed to come from inside the walls. Not loud. If Mara had been awake, I'm not sure she would have heard it. But in that silence, that absolute, rural, Ohio silence, it was unmistakable. It lasted about 90 seconds. Then it stopped. I lay in bed and listened to nothing for 20 minutes and then I fell back asleep. In the morning I checked the furnace, the water heater, the breaker box. Everything was normal. I went to work. I came home. I made dinner. Mara and I watched television after Lily went to bed. At 11:15 we turned in. 2:40 a.m. The sound again. Same tone. Same duration. Same sourceless, interior quality, as though the drywall itself was humming. I got up this time. I walked through the house in my socks, trying to locate it. Kitchen, no. Hallway, no. Living room, closer. I stood in the center of the living room in the dark and I listened, and the sound was coming from beneath me. From the floor. From the basement. I didn't go down. It wasn't fear. It was 2:40 in the morning and I was tired and my pregnant wife was sleeping and it was probably a pipe. I went back to bed. The next night I stayed up. I sat in the living room with the lights off and my phone in my lap, a glass of water on the end table, and I waited. At 2:38 I felt something change. Not the sound, not yet. The air pressure. Like the house inhaled. A subtle compression, as though someone had closed a window I didn't know was open. Then, at exactly 2:40 by the clock in the kitchen, the sound began. I went to the basement door. I need to describe this door because it matters later. It was in the hallway between the kitchen and the living room. It was original to the house, solid wood, painted white so many times the edges were soft and rounded. It had a turn latch, not a lock. I opened it. The stairs went down into blackness. The basement had no windows. I could hear the sound clearly now, not louder, exactly, but denser. More present. It had a quality like resonance. Like something vibrating at a frequency that was almost below hearing but not quite. I turned on the light. A single bulb at the bottom of the stairs, pull chain. I went down. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor, block walls, exposed joists above. Claudette's steel utility shelf was against the far wall. There was a sump pump in the corner. There was nothing else. The sound stopped the moment my foot touched the bottom step. I stood in the basement for 10 minutes. I checked the sump pump. I checked the walls for cracks. I put my hand flat against the concrete and felt nothing. The silence was heavier down there. It was the silence of underground, of earth pressing in from all sides. I went back upstairs and went to bed. The next day I went back to the notebooks. I was looking for something specific now. I found it in the 11th notebook, dated November 2017. The sound wakes me at the same time every night. I have begun timing it. It starts at 2:40 and lasts between 80 and 95 seconds. It comes from the basement. I have gone down during the sound 4 times now. Each time, the sound stops when I reach the bottom of the stairs. Each time, there is nothing there. But I have noticed that after the sound stops, the air in the basement is warm. Not hot. Warm. Like a person has been breathing in a small room. My hands were not steady when I read that. I'll admit that. Because I had not told anyone about the sound. I had not read this entry before hearing it. The sequence was, I heard the sound, I investigated, and then I found Claudette's description. And her description matched mine in every detail. The time. The duration. The location. The cessation upon arrival. All of it. I kept reading. December 2017. I brought a thermometer to the basement. Before the sound, the temperature was 54 degrees. I went upstairs, waited for the sound, and came back down immediately after it stopped. 71 degrees. The basement was 71 degrees. It cooled back to 58 within 20 minutes. I don't know what produces 17 degrees of warmth in a concrete basement in 90 seconds. I am not imagining this. The thermometer is not broken. I bought it new. I bought a thermometer. I need to stop here and say something about what it felt like to do that. I'm an electrician. I work for a municipal utility company. I troubleshoot systems for a living. I am not someone who chases feelings or hunches. I bought the thermometer because Claudette's claim was testable. That's all. I was going to test it, find a rational explanation, a heating duct, a thermal pocket, a problem with the sump pump motor, and I was going to move on. At 2:40 a.m., the sound began. I was already in the living room. I waited for it to end. 91 seconds. I went to the basement. 51 degrees before. I'd logged it at midnight. After the sound, 69 degrees. 18 degrees of unexplained thermal gain in a sealed, unheated concrete basement in 91 seconds. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and I did something I probably should not have done. I read all 34 notebooks. All of them. It took me until past dawn. Mara found me there at 6:15, surrounded by composition books, and I told her I'd gotten up early to go through the old owner's papers for anything we might need. She didn't question it. She was 6 months pregnant and tired, and she trusted me, and that trust is something I think about now. Here is what the full record showed. The figures, the things that looked like David, continued to multiply. By 2019, Claudette counted 11. 11 identical figures occupying her house in a continuous rotation, standing in rooms, watching her. She documented their behavior with the patience of a naturalist. They never touched her. They never moved while she was looking at them. But objects shifted. Chairs rotated. Doors she'd closed were open. A photograph of David on the mantel moved from room to room on its own, tracking the same 72-hour cycle as the figures. And then, in January of 2020, something changed. January 14, 2020. One of them was different today. I have been watching them for so long that I know David's face better than I know my own. I know the line of his jaw and the way his hair fell and the exact distance between his eyes. Number 7, I have numbered them by their positions in the rotation, is wrong. The face is the same but the proportions are off. The distance between the eyes is slightly wider. Maybe 2 millimeters. Maybe less. I measured the photograph and I measured what I could see, and I am certain. Number 7 is not a copy of David. Number 7 is a copy of a copy. It is drifting. That word. Drifting. She used it over and over in the final notebooks. The copies were drifting. Each new one was slightly less accurate than the last. The degradation was tiny, a millimeter here, a shade of color there, but Claudette tracked it with obsessive precision. By notebook 28, she had constructed a chart measuring deviation from the original across 7 facial metrics. The drift was linear. Predictable. Constant. And it was accelerating. April 2020. Number 13 appeared today. It is the worst yet. The jaw is too long. The shoulders are too narrow. The hands, David had beautiful hands, working hands, a carpenter's hands, number 13's hands are wrong. The fingers are the same length. All 5 of them. Exactly the same length. I stared at them for 20 minutes. It didn't move. Its fingers are all the same length. I'm frightened now in a way I have not been before. They were tolerable when they looked like him. When they looked like David, I could pretend. I could sit in the living room and see them in my periphery, and for a moment I could believe he was here. I know that's pathetic. I know. But it was something. Now they're changing and I do not know what they are changing into. The last notebook was dated August 2021. 2 months before Claudette was moved to the care facility. The handwriting was shakier but still legible. Still precise. August 3, 2021. 17 of them now. The newest ones do not look like David at all. They are shaped like a person. They have a face. But it is not a face I recognize. It is not anyone's face. It is a face that has never existed. I think they are trying to look like something, but they have lost the reference. They are working from memory and the memory is degrading, just as mine is. We are both forgetting David. Whatever they are and whatever I am, we are both losing him at the same rate, and what is left behind is something neither of us intended. The sound in the basement is louder now. It begins at 2:40 and it does not stop when I go down. I stand in the warm dark and I hear it and I feel it in my chest and I understand what it is. I have understood for a long time. I just did not want to say it. It is breathing. Something under this house is breathing. And the things upstairs that look less and less like David are what it exhales. That was the last entry. The final page of the final notebook. After that, nothing. 2 months later, Dale moved her to Wheeling. I sat at the kitchen table and the sun was coming in through the window over the sink and I could hear Lily waking up upstairs and Mara turning on the shower and I thought, we live here. We live in this house. My daughter sleeps here. My son will be born in 2 months and he will come home to this house. And then I thought, I have not seen anything. I have heard a sound and measured a temperature change. That's it. Everything else is the testimony of a woman with documented cognitive decline. I'm an electrician. I deal in what's measurable. The sound is measurable. The temperature is measurable. The figures are not. I have never seen a figure. I have never seen anything in this house that I cannot explain. I put the notebooks back in the box. I put the box back in the garage. I went to work. For 2 weeks, I did nothing. I didn't read the notebooks again. I didn't stay up listening for the sound. I went to work, I came home, I helped Mara with the nursery. We painted it pale green. We assembled a crib. Lily picked out a stuffed bear for her brother. Normal life. Life happening the way it's supposed to. But here is the thing about knowing something. You can decide not to think about it. You can discipline your attention. What you cannot do is unknow it. The information sits in you like a seed, and every time you pass the basement door, every time you wake up in the middle of the night for any reason at all, every time the house is quiet, really quiet, that deep Ohio quiet, the seed pulses and you know it's there. On a Thursday night in late October, Mara said something. We were in bed. Lights off. She was on her side, facing away from me, and I thought she was asleep. Then, quietly, "Do you ever feel like the house is listening?" I didn't answer right away. I asked her what she meant. "I don't know. It's probably pregnancy brain. But sometimes when Lily's at school and I'm here alone, I feel like there's attention. Like the rooms are paying attention to me. Not watching, I don't see anything. I just feel like I'm being attended to. Does that make sense?" I told her it was an old house. Old houses have personality. She laughed a little and said, "Yeah, probably." She fell asleep. I did not. At 2:40, the sound came. And this time, lying rigid in bed with my eyes open, I heard something I had not heard before. Not the vibration. Something above it. A higher frequency, barely perceptible, like a second signal riding on top of the first. A pattern. Not random. Not mechanical. Rhythmic. Like breathing, yes. But more than that. Like breathing with intent. Like the breath you take before you speak. That held, preparatory compression of air, the moment right before words. I got out of bed. I went to the hallway. I stood at the top of the stairs. The sound was louder here. Not from the basement this time. From below me, yes, but also from around me. From the walls. From the floor beneath my feet. The house was full of it. Every surface was conducting it, and the higher pattern, that almost speech, was clearer now. I looked down the stairs toward the first floor. There was nothing there. Nothing I could see. But the air at the bottom of the stairs was warm. I could feel it rising, that 18-degree differential, that impossible heat coming up from somewhere beneath the foundation, and in the warmth I could feel something else, something I do not have technical language for. Presence. Not a person. Not a figure. Not a ghost. A presence, as in, the thing that a living creature generates simply by existing in a space. The displacement of emptiness. The way a room feels different when someone is in it even if your back is turned. The stairwell was full of it. I went back to bed. I lay next to my wife and I put my hand on her belly and I felt my son kick and I did not sleep. In the morning I called Dale. I had his number from the closing paperwork. He answered on the fourth ring. I told him I'd found his aunt's notebooks and I wanted to ask a few questions. He was quiet for a long time. "I was hoping you'd just throw those out," he said. I asked him if he'd read them. Some of them. Enough to know she was gone, you know. Toward the end. Her mind. She was seeing things that weren't there. It's why we moved her. I asked him if anything unusual had happened in the house while he was cleaning it out. Another long pause. "Look," he said. "That house has been in my family since my uncle built it. My Uncle David. He built it with his own hands in 1951. He and Claudette lived there their entire marriage. After he died, she didn't handle it well. She started writing things down. Obsessively. She said it helped her remember. But the things she was remembering weren't real. You understand. She loved my uncle. She loved him so much that her mind couldn't accept he was gone, and it started filling in. Creating. That's what the doctors said. That's all it is." I asked him again. "Anything unusual?" While he was there. "No," he said. "Too fast." "Then, it's a house. It's old. Old houses make noise. I asked him about 2:40 a.m. He hung up. He didn't call back. I tried twice more over the next week. Straight to voicemail. November came. Mara was in her 8th month. Lily was excited about the baby. I was working overtime to cover the medical bills. I was tired. I should have let it go. Instead, I started my own log. I bought a composition notebook, the same kind Claudette used, not on purpose, it was just what they had at the dollar store, and I began recording the sound. Every night. Time of onset, duration, perceived intensity, temperature readings in the basement before and after. I logged it for 2 straight weeks. The data was consistent. 2:40 a.m., every single night. Duration between 84 and 97 seconds. Temperature differential between 16 and 21 degrees. The sound never varied in quality. The higher frequency pattern was present every time, but I could never resolve it into anything identifiable. On November 14th, I added a new variable. I set up a camera in the living room. Just my phone on a tripod, recording in night vision, pointed at the hallway and the basement door. I let it run from midnight to 5 a.m. I reviewed the footage the next morning in my truck before work. From midnight to 2:39, nothing. An empty hallway in green-gray night vision, perfectly still. At 2:40, the audio picked up the sound, faint, but there. A low drone just at the edge of the microphone's range. For 90 seconds, the hallway vibrated slightly. I could see it in the footage as a subtle blur, like the camera was trembling, though I'd placed it on a stable surface. Then the sound stopped. And at 2:41 and 37 seconds, the basement door moved. Not opened. Moved. It shifted in its frame, a 1/4 inch, maybe less, as though pressure had been applied from the other side and then released. A single, gentle push from below. I watched that moment 40 times. I zoomed in. I slowed it down. I listened to the audio at that timestamp. And in the silence after the sound, in the half-second after the door moved, there was something on the recording that should not have been there. A breath. Not the ambient vibration. Not a mechanical artifact. A single, clear, expelled breath. Like someone standing directly on the other side of the basement door had exhaled. That night, when Mara and Lily were asleep, I went to the basement. Not at 2:40. Earlier. 11 p.m. I brought a flashlight and the thermometer and I went down the stairs and I stood in the center of the concrete floor and I waited. I don't know exactly what I was waiting for. Confirmation. Refutation. Something I could file in a category and move on from. The basement was 53 degrees. Silent. Empty. The steel shelf stood against the far wall with nothing on it. The sump pump was quiet. The pull chain bulb cast a circle of yellow light that didn't quite reach the corners. I turned off the flashlight. I turned off the bulb. I stood in total darkness in the basement of my house and I waited. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then the warmth began. Not suddenly. Gradually. Like a window had opened in a wall that had no window, and summer was on the other side. The air temperature rose around me, slowly, steadily, from all directions at once. I held the thermometer in front of me though I couldn't see it. And in the dark, in the warm dark, I felt it. The presence. Not in front of me. Not behind me. Around me. Like I was standing inside of it. Like the warmth was not a temperature, it was proximity. Something was close to me in a way that had nothing to do with distance. I heard the breathing. Not the 240 sound. Not the vibration from the walls. Close breathing. Intimate breathing. The breathing of something whose mouth was near my ear, whose exhalation I could feel on my skin, and I could not move. I want you to understand that. I am not a coward. I've worked in confined spaces, in electrical vaults with live current, in situations that would make most people panic. I could not move. Not because I was frozen with fear, because my body understood something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. It was learning me. The way Claudette described the figures standing and watching, the way they studied her for years before they began to replicate David, this was the same process. The same attention. I was being observed at a resolution I couldn't fathom, by something that was close enough to taste the air I displaced, and it was learning what I looked like. I turned on the flashlight. The basement was empty. 71 degrees. I was alone. I went upstairs and I sat on the living room floor and I pressed my palms into my face and I breathed and I thought about what to do. I thought about Mara. I thought about Lily. I thought about my son who didn't have a name yet. I thought about Claudette, alone in this house for 9 years with things that looked less and less like her husband, writing in her notebooks while something under the foundation breathed and learned. And I thought about the thing she never wrote. The thing I realized was missing from 34 notebooks spanning 4 years. She never tried to leave. Not once. In all those pages, all those meticulous entries, there was not a single sentence about selling the house. Not a word about moving. Not a moment where she packed a bag or called a realtor or drove away. She documented, she measured, she logged, and she stayed. Why? I went back to Notebook 19. February 2019. I know I should leave. I know what a rational person would do. But I need to explain something and I don't think I can explain it to anyone who hasn't been in this house. The presence, the thing beneath us, the thing that makes the sound, the thing that sends them up, it is not hostile. I have lived with it for 4 years and it has never harmed me. It has watched me. It has filled my house with things that were my husband's face. But it has not harmed me. And this is what I cannot explain, this is what makes me sound insane, it is not indifferent to me either. It knows I am here. It knows I am grieving. And the things it sends up, the copies, the figures, I think they are for me. I think it is trying to give me back what I lost. I think it is trying, and failing, and trying again. And each time it fails a little differently. And I cannot leave something that is trying that hard to do something kind. I closed the notebook. I didn't open it again. November passed. My son was born on the 21st. We named him Caleb. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, healthy, perfect. Mara recovered well. Lily held her brother in the hospital with a look of such serious tenderness that I cried. We brought him home on the 23rd. That night was the first night the sound did not come at 2:40. It came at 2:40 and it did not stop. I was awake, new baby, I was barely sleeping anyway, and at 2:40 the vibration started and I waited for it to end and it didn't. 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 3, 5. Mara stirred. Is the heater making that noise? She murmured, and I said I'd check, and I got up. The house was warm. Not just the basement. The entire house. I checked the thermostat in the hallway. We kept it at 67 at night. It read 74. As I stood there, it ticked to 75. The sound was everywhere. It was in the floor and the walls and the ceiling, and it was louder than it had ever been, and the higher frequency, the almost speech, was not almost anymore. It was a voice. I could not make out words. It was not language I recognized. But it had cadence, pitch, rhythm. It rose and fell. It paused. It repeated. It was saying something, and it was saying it with the urgency of something that has been waiting a very long time to be heard. Caleb started crying. I went to the nursery. I picked him up. He was warm, not fever warm, not sick warm. Warm the way the basement was warm. Warm with that presence. I held him and the sound stopped. The house went silent. The thermostat clicked back to 68. The warmth receded. Caleb stopped crying. He looked at me with those dark, unfocused newborn eyes, and then he looked past me, over my shoulder, at the doorway behind me, and he smiled. Newborns don't smile. I know that. You know that. Everyone knows that. It's gas, it's reflex, it's involuntary muscle movement. Newborns do not smile because they do not have the neurological development to produce a deliberate social response. My son smiled at the doorway. I did not turn around. I held him and I rocked him and I did not turn around, and after a while his eyes drifted shut and I put him back in the crib and I left the room. The hallway was empty. It was November, and cold, and the house was quiet. I went to the kitchen and I drank a glass of water and I stood at the window where Claudette said the first figure used to stand, and I looked at my reflection in the dark glass and I did not look behind me. I have not stayed up past midnight since that night. I have not opened the basement door. I have not read the notebooks. The sound continues. Every night, 2:40 a.m., 90 seconds. I hear it from bed and I close my eyes and I wait for it to pass. Mara does not mention it anymore. Lily has never mentioned it. Caleb sleeps through it now, or at least he doesn't cry. But there are things I have noticed. Small things. Things I am not logging because I don't want a record. The chairs move. Not far. An inch. 2 inches. Rotated slightly from how I left them. Always facing inward, toward the center of whichever room they're in. Always facing the place where a person would stand. There are warm spots. Brief, transient patches of warmth in rooms that should be cold. They appear and disappear. I walk through them in the hallway, in the kitchen, in Lily's room. They are body temperature. They are exactly body temperature. And Caleb. Caleb, who is 4 months old now and growing beautifully and healthy and perfect. Caleb, who has started doing something that no one comments on because no one else sees it. He watches the corners of rooms. Not randomly. Not the way babies track light or movement. Deliberately. Specifically. His eyes fix on a point in the empty air near the ceiling, or beside the doorframe, or above the kitchen window, and he watches it with the focus and attention of someone who sees something there. And sometimes, when he watches, he smiles. Last week I came home early from work. Mara was out picking up Lily from school. The house was empty. I stood in the kitchen and the afternoon light was coming through the window, that particular warm gold light that only happens in late winter when the sun is low, and the house was quiet. Not silent. Quiet. There's a difference. Silent is the absence of sound. Quiet is the presence of something choosing not to speak. I stood in the kitchen and the light came through and I felt the warmth and I knew, the way Claudette knew, the way you know someone is in a room before you see them, that I was not alone. That I have not been alone in this house since the day we moved in. That the things beneath the basement, the breathing, the warmth, the presence, they have been here the whole time. They were here before Claudette. They were here before David. They were here when the foundation was poured in 1951, and they will be here when this house is gone. And they are learning us. Me. Mara. Lily. Caleb. The way they learned David. I think about Claudette's figures. The ones that looked like David at first, and then looked less and less like him, and then looked like something else entirely. Something that had never existed. Something that borrowed a shape and couldn't hold it. I think about what she wrote in her last notebook. We are both forgetting David. Whatever they are and whatever I am, we are both losing him. And I think about what that means for us. Not now. Now, the copies are learning. Now they are in the study phase, the observation phase, the long patient phase of watching and recording. But eventually, a year, 5 years, 10, they will begin to replicate. And the first ones might look like me. Might look exactly like me, standing in the kitchen by the window. And Mara will see them, or she won't, and Lily will grow up in a house where the corners of rooms contain something she can almost see, and Caleb, who has been watched since the day he came home, Caleb will grow up thinking it's normal. And the copies will drift. They always drift. Whatever is beneath this house, it can learn a shape but it cannot hold it. The memory degrades. The proportions shift. The fingers become the same length. The eyes stop blinking. And what you're left with is not the person you loved. It's not even a person. It's the residue of an attempt. The afterimage of something that tried very hard to be kind and could not sustain it. I have not told Mara. I tell myself it's because there's nothing to tell. I have a sound at 2:40. I have temperature readings. I have notebooks written by a woman with dementia. I have a baby who looks at empty corners. That's not evidence. That's not enough to uproot my family, sell a house at a loss, and move back to a rental we can't afford. But that's not why I haven't told her. I haven't told her because if I tell her, she'll want to leave. And if we leave, whatever is down there will lose its reference material. It will lose its model. And I keep thinking about Claudette's figures, the ones that stopped looking like David. The ones that became something else. Something with no face it recognized. Something trying to be a person without a person to copy. I keep thinking about what happens to something that is learning to love you if you take yourself away before it's done. I keep thinking about whether that would be cruel. And I know, that's not a thought I should be having. That's not my thought. That's the house. That's the warmth. That's the thing that breathes at 2:40 in the morning, finding the part of me that wants to stay and pressing on it gently, the way you press a bruise to confirm it's yours. The notebooks are in the garage. I should burn them. I should sell the house. I should take my family and go. I should do a lot of things. It's 2:38. I can feel the air changing. Caleb is awake. I can hear him on the monitor, not crying. Cooing. The way babies coo when they see a face they recognize. I'm going to go check on him. I'm going to go to his room and pick him up, and I am not going to look at the corner he's looking at. I am not going to look. I am not going to look.